Hi, everyone. Welcome to our Facebook Live broadcast. I'm Steve Altition, Director of Client Partnerships at Pacific Cascade Legal, and I'm here today with our founding attorney, Louis Landerholm, to talk about how baseball is like divorce. It ain't over till it's over. Hey, Louis, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you, Steve?
I'm doing well. Baseball's about to start, has started, and, one of the all-time great quotes from Yogi Berra, it ain't over till it's over. And, it seems nonsensical, but it's actually pretty profound. And, the game doesn't end. There's not a clock. It's not over till it's actually over. And I thought that was a great analogy for divorces. Um, and so let's kind of talk about that. It's not over just because you've come to an agreement with the other party, and not necessarily over if you've had a trial and the judge has made a decision. And potentially maybe not even over until the decree comes in. So let's talk a little bit about why it isn't over just because the judge makes a decision on the divorce itself.
Yeah, those are all good points. I think there's a couple different stages in divorce where this feeling is typical, where clients feel the have the feeling that aren't we done? Isn't this
Yes.
over? Because it's a long, can be an arduous process, very emotional process. So we totally understand all of that. There's during the divorce process, there's a couple times when this becomes very prevalent. It's either the parties have reached an agreement and believe, okay, we're done. Or, like you said, where a judge has made a ruling and it feels final and it feels like we've come to this climax and we're finally done, just to realize that no, there's this whole document called a judgment. Other states call it a decree that has to be drafted and has to be written up by the attorneys to actually effectuate these agreements or these rulings. And in Oregon specifically, typically we have when a judge is ruled, we have 28 days to enter the judgment. So by itself, you're talking about a 4 week period before it
Right.
even has to get entered. There's plenty of times where that can run longer, and then you could potentially have what's called a form of judgment hearing, where if the parties don't agree over the language, because what happens in a divorce and what people don't always understand is that when a judge makes a ruling, they're making a ruling on high level issues. The what is going to happen. This is how I always kind of explain it. You've got the what is going to be ordered between the parties, but when you get to the judgment writing, the how becomes really important. Okay, that's great that the other person or I was awarded the house, or maybe I have to sell the house. Well, how am I going to do this? Right? What is my timeline? Who's responsible for what? So all of these issues become necessary to negotiate and to then ultimately get information from the judge as to what they're actually going to order. And it can be a very frustrating time for a lot of people who feel like I should be done with this, and it can take longer than what people anticipate, just because there's still people involved and we still have disagreements. So that's really evident even during the process, and then after the process, we can, even once you have a judgment, there's a lot of other things that need to be done, and we can definitely talk about those as well.
Oh yeah. It's funny you talk about the time between the judge making an order and the order being actually signed and filed, and the things that can go wrong. I know to remember long ago a case where there was probably 4 months of back and forth in between the attorneys on who is responsible for paying the people to mow the lawn or hire somebody. And it could be really crazy, which is why I really like, when you do things, you try to get as much of that as you can resolved even before the final.
Yeah, I mean, we've been doing it so long, we anticipate a lot of these things now, and so we will ask a judge for clarification on the record, so that way we can avoid some of these. Like, who is going to pay for the other thing is when somebody's selling a house, who's paying for necessary repairs?
Yeah.
What happens if one party disagrees that it needs a new roof? How are we going to deal with that issue? And so we try to avoid some of the conflict after the fact by getting a ruling on these things, but sometimes it just is impossible to foresee what would come up, and it can take frustratingly long to get all of these details ironed out because they're really important details. And once people are finally living their separate lives, right, after a divorce, then all of these things come up because they're all new issues for them, and so we have to think through, and then we have to draft it accordingly. And so there's the getting the either the agreement or taking it to a judge, and the technical part of drafting the document can take some time.
Yeah, that's where experience comes in. That's exactly where experience comes in. Okay, so you get the judge to sign it, you get it filed, but are there possibilities that it could still go on? I mean, can the judge make orders that are filed, but still require follow-up to have them done?
uh, all the time. So a classic example is if a house is ordered sold at trial, it's clearly not going to be sold within a month, or I mean, in most cases, not going to be sold within a month or two. And so there's going to be an ongoing, issues with dealing with selling the house. If you have kids, there's a lot of ongoing issues with the time. The a judge may order certain times for exchanges, but the parties may negotiate otherwise. So there's going to be that ongoing part of things. A judge could order that a car has to be signed over to the other party. So the title has to get signed and sent over to the other party. There's other pieces like having to go get a name change. If a party asks for a name change in the divorce, they can get that into the document, and then you have to go and do the name change after the fact. Other things that judges can ask for are payments of debt or payments of certain things, especially with division of like retirement accounts and doing what's called a quadro after the fact. For people who have retirement accounts, they're dividing the quadro process alone can be another 6 months because that's a secondary order that has to be done once the divorce is finalized. So that can take a good amount of time to get the division worked out with a quadro attorney. So those are
It,
just some high level ones.
yeah, but in any of those that you've mentioned, there is a potential for a dispute. There is a potential to have to, kind of get back in the trenches.
Yeah, we hope to avoid them, but sometimes it's inevitable because either the ruling was just vague and people didn't fully understand what was supposed to happen, or didn't take into consideration all of the nuances. But then there's the other part of it that just we don't know what we don't know until people start moving forward with these things and issues just pop up and we have to
Yeah.
deal with them. And trying to it's really hard to work with people during the divorce process because it's emotional, and people want to divorce their spouse. After the divorce process, it's 10 times more difficult because everybody feels like they are divorced, because they are, right? But now we still have to deal with these things that are intertwined. So it's a balancing act for sure, but we just have to go through all of the issues one at a time to be able to help clients get to the actual finish line.
Yeah. And, even after the divorce, and there are, like you said, things that need to be, transferred, things that are ordered to be done, but there are things to be done that aren't necessarily ordered, but really kind of are part and parcel with the divorce, you know, especially if you have kids and maybe want to change Social Security stuff, your driver's license, all those things. And like you had said, your will, those are important to really wrap up the divorce.
Yeah. Well, and Steve, you work with our clients post-divorce a lot. How often are you getting a call from somebody who was divorced a year ago, 2 years ago, and they have questions about how do I do this or what should happen in this in relation to my judgment? Does that happen often?
Yeah, it happens a lot. And the good part of having someone for them to call like we do and not have to, say, oh my God, this came up. Is it too trivial to call my attorney? Is it, and what we've decided is no, it's not too trivial. Don't worry about that part of it. Don't worry about the cost or the triviality. You always get to call back. And because the divorce is almost never over in reality. You know, I just had a call not that long ago about someone wanted to change their social security, and it had been 8 months, and they would just and their question was, well, is there a time frame? Can I not do it anymore? So there's like questions that there's no stupid question afterwards.
Yeah. Well, because like you said, like Social Security, you get the Social Security Administration in play. You've got administrative rules. You've got very technical, nuanced rules, and it's complicated.
Yep.
And that's why I think all of us are really happy to have you on board to be able to help our clients walk through all of those and not feel like have to get onto specifically an attorney's calendar right away, that you can triage and problem solve 90% of it. And then if the answer is really yes, you need to talk to your attorney, then you get that scheduled. It really helps clients just be able to navigate those post divorce issues that pop up all the time.
Yeah, yeah. And when they do, that's kind of the one last thing I was thinking about, and it's not over till it's over, is that you know you can't let someone steal second base. Somebody will try to do something that the divorce says they shouldn't do.
Yep.
And that's where again you guys take over, and either enforcement or on the flip side, modification may be required.
Yeah. Yeah, and that happens a lot, especially with parenting plans on the modification side or like a spousal support modification. But definitely on the enforcement side, when somebody isn't doing what they're supposed to be doing, we have to go back and have the judge, slap them on the back of the hand and say, no, this is what was ordered. You have to do this. And then but unfortunately, you have to go through that process, but it's a necessary process at times.
Yeah, yeah. Wow, this was great. I think that so many people, when the divorce, even when the divorce decree is signed, when the ink dries, they think it's done. I never have to talk to my ex again, or I never have to talk to an attorney again, and I can just move forward and put everything out of my mind. But that really isn't the case.
Yep, not most of the time.
Not most of the time. So again, thanks, Louis. This baseball analogy really does kind of work. Yogi Berra was talking about, in a game, in a season, there again, it's not over till it is actually over. And while it sounds, like, well, of course that's true, there are a lot of nuances that go into that. So really, thanks for talking about those today. Very,
Cool.
very informative.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Everyone else, thanks you for joining us today. Any further questions that you have, feel free to contact our firm. We can get you connected with an attorney who can help you. And of course, until next time, stay safe,